How's it going, guys? Peshcats here. Hope you guys can hear me. This is going to be a late night video that I'm doing at 3:30 in the morning, and there's other people in my house that are asleep, so I don't want to wake them up. But anyways, I'm going to be taking a look at the card of the days for Monday and Tuesday this week for Kantai collection. The reason I'm just doing a video on just the cards from these 2 days is because first of all, Sunday there were no card of the day reveals because it was Marine Day in Japan, which is a national holiday, so they didn't do card of the day on Sunday, well, like my Sunday. So they had some card of the days for Monday and Tuesday. And as for the day that I upload this, I'm uploading this on Wednesday at like 3:30 in the morning. And at this point, countries like Singapore and Hong Kong have already gotten their KC3 boxes, and they've already started opening them. So as of this point, basically any cards that Bushiroad reveals over the next day or two will have already been public knowledge. I'm planning to do a video on all the cards that haven't been revealed yet for card of the day, and I'm getting some help from the guys over at the Board and Blog, Board Saviors, so that's where I'm going to be getting my card pictures from. But anyways, let's get right on to the card reveals. So we're starting with Monday's reveals. We have Shoukaku Kaini and Shoukaku Kaini A. I'm going to be starting with the one on the bottom. So 3295 Shoukaku Kaini, which is a ship girl and an aircraft carrier. And Shoukaku and Zuikaku, they both have the change form sort of abilities like the Kasumi cards, which I did, which I took a look at in my first set of reveals. So Shoukaku Kaini, when another ship girl attacks, she gets 1,000 until the end of the turn. So she can potentially go up to 11.5 if she attacks last. On the turn that she comes into play, either from your hand or by the effect of Shoukaku Kaini A, which we'll get to soon, if her attack is cancelled, you get to burn one. At the start of the Encore phase, if she is rested, you can put her into stock to change to Shoukaku Kaini A. So this is a solid offensive card. It comes in with a cancel burn, and it's able to gain power, so it's able to make it to the Encore step of the turn so that you can change her out for Shoukaku Kaini A, which is the more defensive option. Also, what I have noted here is because she sends herself to stock for the change cost, you can use her to replenish some of the stock if you're playing her in a deck with Akagi, for example. Akagi eats all your stock at the start of the climax phase. So because Shoukaku sends herself into stock, you can get a little bit of stock back to use on your following turn. Now Shoukaku Kaini A is the more defensive option of the two. She's a ship girl and she's an armored carrier, so the fact that she's a more defensive card makes a lot of sense here. So during the opponent's turn, as long as she's on your, I forgot to add, she has to be on your front row, my bad. During the opponent's turn, if you take damage and you do not cancel, if this card is in your front row, you top check one and you either leave it on top or send it to the waiting room. So this is an effect that we've seen before on cards like 3-2 Yusa or 3-2 Shinobu, and it's a very good effect. It's more powerful on like early drop cards, so like 3-2 Ami, but just the fact that the card even has this effect, and you can switch between a cancel burn and then this defensive option on the opponent's turn is very, very nice. The other two abilities of the card is that it has yellow card encore, so you can discard a yellow climax, or you can discard a yellow event like a compass, although I don't know why you wouldn't have used the compass on the previous turn, but you can discard any yellow card for this, and you would want this to stay on the board so that you can use its third effect, which is an activate ability, rest 2 characters, and it can rest herself as part of the cost. Send her to waiting room and then play Shoukaku Kaini from waiting room, and doing so will cause Shoukaku Kaini to get her cancel burn back so that you can use it again. So Shoukaku Kaini kind of promoting like a more stable level 3 game where you can repeatedly use rotate between the offensive and the defensive abilities, and I believe that the Shoukaku overall package is very solid. I think you could probably run like 3 copies of each, or maybe 3 copies of the Kaini and 2 copies of the Kaini A, and I think it would be pretty solid. Moving on to the Zoe Kaku line, I don't think the Zoe Kakus are anywhere near as strong as the Shoukakus. So again, we're going to start with the bottom card, Shoukaku Kaini, 3295. She's a ship girl and an aircraft carrier. And when you play her, you look at the top X cards of your deck, add up to one of them to your hand, and then you drop the rest. And so X is the number of yellow characters on your stage, and it includes herself. So you can look at up to 5 cards. And her other effect is the Encore phase change. By sending her to stock, you change to Zuikaku Kaini A from your waiting room. So obviously this card doesn't have any like offensive capabilities. It doesn't have any sort of burn or anything like that. It doesn't even add soul. It just like looks through the top X cards of your deck to add a card. This seems to me like the quality of cards that you would see in like a TD level 3. It's really just like not that great in my opinion. The two most obvious cards that you could dig for. So I made the case where like with the Shoukaku you could play it with a Kagi so that like you get more stock by changing into stock. And this card, I guess it sort of has some synergy with that in that you can dig for the Akagi climax if you don't already have it, or you can dig for just like any climax that you need really for like a level 3 climax combo. And of course you can always dig for Compass, but I don't think the card is like really that good. There's like not really much of a reason to change back into it from Zuikaku Kaini A. Like the Shoukaku, you get your cancel burn back. With this one, you search for a card. Like I guess it's not terrible, I guess, but it's not that great either. Zuikaku Kaini A, so she's the defensive part, whereas like Shoukaku has the top check scry. Zuikaku Kaini A gives the character across -1 soul. And when she's front attacked, you can discard a yellow character to give her plus 2500 power until the end of the turn. So she can protect herself by making herself 12-5 at the cost of 1 card, as opposed to Shoukaku, who has the Encore ability. Now this does make Zuikaku Kaini A less susceptible to being reversed by the opponent's cards, whereas Shoukaku, she doesn't inherently give herself any power. She just has Encore to save herself when she would be reversed. And then Zuikaku Kaini A, she has the last ability, rest 2 characters, send her to waiting room, and play Zuikaku Kaini from waiting room. And the -1 soul could potentially hurt you if your opponent sets up their field in a way that the -1 soul like gives them like a perfect lethal or something. Let's say that they leave you at like 3/6 and they have a 2 soul card and it becomes a 1 soul card. They just swing you for 1 and then they kill you. And overall I think the package is just less weak than Shoukaku, and I don't think it's worth running over the Shoukaku line. So yeah, that sums up my thoughts on those cards. The last card for Monday's reveals is Oki Nami, which is, Oki Nami, which is a level 0 Ship Girl and Destroyer, 1500 power. I've seen a lot of mixed opinions on the card of the day post for this card. A lot of people are saying that it's like a budget Akatsuki, but I think that there's enough differences between the two that this card should be viewed as like a standalone card. As a standalone card, it is pretty good. It's got 2 decent abilities. First one, when it comes into play, you may bounce an opponent's cost 0 character in their front row. And as an activate ability, you can pay 1 and send her from the stage to the waiting room to basically do an Akatsuki effect. You top check up to 4 cards, add a Ship Girl to your hand from those 4 cards, and you send the rest to the waiting room. So some differences between the 2 cards, and what like this sort of supports my statement about how you shouldn't really compare the 2. So between this and the Akatsuki, you're paying 1 stock, whereas Akatsuki you just discard and you get to check top 4 for free. The Oki Nami kills herself, whereas the Akatsuki is a discard outlet. So you can use Akatsuki to discard cards that you want to be in your waiting room, things like Verni or Climaxes or Row 500, things like that. And that's where Akatsuki has a bit of an advantage in that respect. The Akatsuki is impacting your compression more than the Oki Nami is. Now, going on to the second ability, or the first ability rather, which is the bounce. You can bounce 1/0s because they are cost 0. This could potentially save your stuff from dying. Let's say your opponent just like walls up with like 3 big 1/0s. You can play this, bounce one of them, and that opens up a lane for you to freely attack with your character and not be afraid of like getting countered or something like that. You do have to be careful about the matchup that you're using this effect in though, because you're leaving a lane open, which means that your character is going to survive into your opponent's turn. So if you're playing a deck with on reversibility, then you really have to be careful that you don't leave something that's like super vulnerable to getting reversed for their ability. The last really cool thing about this card is if you're playing 1/0 that can come in early, so something like a Verni or Ellie, you can use this to get rid of it. Overall, I think it's a decent card though, but I still think Akatsuki, you can't say this is a replacement for Akatsuki, because I think the Akatsuki is just like much more solid. And moving on to Tuesday's previews, we first have Festival Hallmikaze, which is a ship, girl, and destroyer. She's a 1065 oversize, and her downside is during this card's battle, if you take damage and you do not cancel, send this to waiting room. So at first glance, this seems just like a really stupid ability, but the way I see it is that you have a 1065 when you're attacking your opponent's cards. So this can be just used to kill your opponent's like bigger stuff, because this just has a big base power. On the defensive, I can see this as somewhat of an insurance versus on reverse abilities. Let's say you don't want to take damage, you don't want to take like too much damage. So like if you do cancel the attack, then your opponent gets their ability. But if you don't cancel, then your opponent doesn't get their on reverse ability. So it's kind of like an insurance. It prevents your opponent from not only dealing the damage to you and also getting their effect. They either get one or the other. However, against any character that doesn't have an on reverse ability, this card dies pretty easily, and like they can just like play random level 0 and just be like poke for 1, and then you lose your Hallmikaze and they don't lose their character. So you have to be very careful about that. And for that reason, I think this card is not very good, not worth using. I'm sure somebody's going to run it like for funsies, but in like a competitive sense, I don't think the card is worth using at all. The final card of the week that we have for the card of the day reveals is Suzuki, which is a 2/1 ship, girl, and destroyer with 8k power, and she has a climax combo. On attack with the stock soul, you bounce one of your other characters, and then until the end of the turn, she gets plus 3500 power, but at the start of the encore step, I believe. Yeah, at the start of the encore step of that turn, you send her to stock. So first thing that I want to note is that bouncing one of your own characters is optional, but there are benefits to bouncing your own characters. Probably the biggest one being that you can bounce your reversed characters back to your hand, which is allow you to save them to play them again. This has good value with cards like Suiciders or cards with good on-play abilities, so that you can reuse the abilities by bouncing them back to your hand and playing them back down. Now she's probably going to kill something. I mean, she's like 11-5 higher if you have support, so that's usually big enough to kill plenty of stuff. And because the climax is a stock soul and she's going to be sending herself to stock, that's like 5 or even more if you have multiple copies of this. You can get 5 stock for that turn. Now granted, she's a 2/1, so one of those stock is going to be to refund the cost that you paid to even put her into play in the first place, but I mean, you are getting stock. And you clearing up space to avoid on reverse abilities, since you can bounce one card back to your hand, and at the same time the Suzuki sending herself to stock, so you're going to have potentially up to 2 spaces on your board, but you have to be careful because those empty spaces might make you end up eating more damage. Probably the biggest, most obvious downside to this card is that you are just straight up losing a character. So the way I like to think of this combo, like in my head, the way I see this, it's kind of like a Suicider. It's like a Suicider that lets you get +1 stock after using its ability, because it sends herself to stock. She kills something that you want to die, and then she goes to stock. So that's the way I see the card. Personally, I don't think it's that good. I don't think it'll see very much, if any, play, but the card is there. So that is all for this week's card of the day reveals. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys soon with the reveals from the Singapore guys. So thanks for watching. Bye.